Here is a scene from what I consider to be one of the most mysterious and haunting films ever made.
Miss Mari is gone, sir.
She's not gone. I saw her.
Whoever you saw was not your wife, sir. Oh, let the dead rest.
I'm going to see her in this room. I'm going to see her come through the doorway.
What is it about the 1978 film Bruges La Mort that is so haunting? Could it be the rich and authentic atmosphere of the 19th century? Could it be the story it tells? Or perhaps because of how surreal it is? But most of all, what is so haunting about this film is how unknown it is. You watch it and are immediately transported into this world of dreams and puppets. You feel like you know something nobody else does, and it sticks with you.
You see, it never could get, as you could tell, it could never get distributed. It's not a kind of film that has any commercial value, for any kind of popular audience. When we actually restored it, I went, wait a second, because it looked so much better than a horrible print that we had that we pulled off a video. I was able to make changes that I realized after so many years, I shouldn't have done them that way. But you've got to realize that, it's very frustrating to have a film like that actually nobody sees. I had enough money to redo all of the films. So almost all of the short films, we got to go back to the original and put them into pristine order, except that we weren't able to clean them. Bruges was cleaned, and I can't tell you what a laborious effort that is.
I see that you casted Anthony Daniels, and
yeah. And it also has Nicholas Grace is in it as well. Right. When I came to cast it, I had no money whatsoever. So this film, I think, was made for less than maybe $20,000 or something like that. It had a lot of auxiliary things that I didn't have to pay for because the opera company that basically was doing the opera that it was taken from, they paid for the costumes. The costumes were designed by a designer that won an Academy Award for The Great Gatsby. A lot of high-end, things, because we had to have them for these scenes in the opera. A lot of the financing was already in place, but we did have to hire a cast. And I had to actually film this theater company, you see, doing their kind of thing. And finally, there was so much money involved in it, and I had always dreamed of making a feature. So I just went, look, at the same time we're filming the opera material, we're just going to go ahead and film a feature. I knew Anthony for a while. I was one of the friends that he had made in film. So every time I went back, I would, have dinner or lunch or something like that. And he was already having problems, you see, because nobody would cast him. He had found, he had gone to a theater in South Africa because they allowed him to have a lead in a play there that was a comedy. And then when he came back, nobody would hire him. And that role destroyed his life. He was never able to do anything but that. In a sense, it kept him solvent, and it made him a lot of money. But as an actor, he was always frustrated. So that's much earlier. He had never been chosen for Star Wars at that time. Yeah.
Strangest came out in 1972, and when I watched it, it felt very reminiscent of Pasolini's The Life trilogy. And I was just wondering if you got any inspiration from Pasolini at all, or the Decameron.
By the time we got there to Beatrice Cenci, I had really been through, I was mostly influenced by the New Wave, and I was influenced by camera movement. I didn't totally love Pasolini. I basically was more influenced by a film called Last Year at Marienbad, which basically is a sort of formed my film consciousness. It left a huge impression on me. I saw it in Paris before I spoke French terribly well. And so I saw it in French, and I had to just sort of make out what it was all about. But I loved the movement in the film. So my job as I started making films was to prove to myself that I could make films that looked like they cost a lot of money when they didn't. I had to kind of completely absorb all of these areas that other people pay people to do. And that is what really distinguishes my work from other people. I had to learn how to do all of that myself because there was no money to pay anyone. Beatrice was this project because it was so elaborate, and we filmed in Rome. Rome was the capital of the movie industry in Europe at that time. When we got there, we had nothing cast, and we would literally have dinner at night, and then we would walk through the streets. And when we saw somebody that looked like they would look good, that they should be in the Renaissance, we would ask them if they would be willing to come and make a movie the next day. Other thing is, in Rome, there was this costume, there was a costume department that had all of the Renaissance clothes from all of the Zeffirelli films, from Romeo and Juliet, from all the films that have been made about the Renaissance, etc. And that house, that costume house, was incredibly inexpensive. And then we could not get any permissions for the locations because they all belonged to the Vatican. We would drive to one of these locations, and we would arrive, we would set up the camera, get everybody in place, and then the custodian would come out and say, "You can't film here. This is a property of the Vatican. You can't." And then you'd go, "Look, it's only going to be a few minutes. Here's $20, and we're only going to take," and so you could actually steal almost any scene for at least $50. We did go to a little town in the mountains to have some of the murder scenes, and there the people were just so delighted. We had an entire beautiful village to film in, pristinely, without any problems at all. That would never happen today or any other time, as far as I could tell.
A lot of your films are dialogueless, or at least a lot of your content doesn't have a lot of dialogue, and I was wondering, both how do you go about writing your scripts, and how do you decide what you are going to make a film about?
Well, you decide what you're going to make a film about sort of under the circumstances that come up. How do you make things clear without using dialogue? And that is what I teach now, because I basically think you have to learn to do that first. Then you can add dialogue. Then you can, as long as you have a film that makes sense visually and it moves along and the action in it is actually real, that you know now how to construct a film. What are you going to make? What are you going to make a film about? I would say that trauma is the absolute, fountain of all drama. Personal trauma is what guides almost all dramatic life. Trauma leaves this residue that is universal. And I think that when your films may kind of contemplate a traumatic event, something that is really means something in people's lives, I think that probably you've got the basis of a fairly communicable film. So in a sense, that becomes the place that you start looking to see what that you care about that might be expressed by some traumatic event that has some kind of movement to it, that has some kind of forward motion. And that's another thing that's very hard for students to, come up with. They have a lot of very still films or films that basically don't go anywhere, and they try to build from that, which I think is a stumbling block. Our problems, in film is that you're always looking for a story. I would say the first thing is when you're young, almost everyone has the same experience. They go outside and they look up at the heavens and they look at the stars. It would be that type of thing that you try to grasp a little bit as you try to think about what kind of films you want to make. You want to have moments that are universal enough and that they speak for enough of experience that they are effective. And I don't think that very many young students, you see, they're all, you can speak for yourself, but you've had all this experience looking at film.
Right.
And there are things you like, and there are things you want to do. So mostly that's the only place students have to go to start. And so they make movies like they've seen. And usually those movies are not very profound, and they are not very much about things that are very important. Few students try to start with things that are universal and everybody experiences. How would I describe that experience in a film? And what would be an incident that would happen that would help me move a film through there? I think the less that is in the script, and this is what a lot of great directors talk about, is that they take a script and then they only follow it to a certain extent. And then most of the time they're improvising, they're doing something else to make it richer. This is the hardest thing for any film student to do. What do I want to make my film about? You have to go back in your life and you have to go back in yourself and see what are those things that are really vital to you. And if you can get in touch with those, then your filmmaking will have some kind of personality and it will have its own life.
Et ibi redetur votum in